Hey guys, welcome to Life in Perspective. Man, we are finally back. And this guest, I feel like, needs no introduction. We've been waiting to have her here in the room with us. I'm talking mother, wife, author, innovator. I just, anything on the list, she is all those things. And for me, she has been a blueprint for what ministry looks like in the context of culture. Pastor Sarah Jakes Roberts. Welcome.
Hey, girl.
I feel like it's been a long time coming.
I can't speak to that, but I remember when you started this podcast and just how excited I was that you would be adding your voice and your unique offering to the world. So I'm just excited to be a part of it.
No, for sure. I remember too. And I remember first episode launches, I sent it to you, and you shared it on your story for 24 hours, and I almost lost my mind. I was like, whoa.
Yeah,
it's so
into
crazy.
The world. Let's do this.
You said, oh, no, let's do it
Here
for real.
Here we are. Yes.
No, it's okay. It's so crazy. I remember the week, maybe like a week or two before it launched, we were middle of pandemic, and you were preaching a sermon. And I don't remember the name of it, but it was about how the will of God cost us. And even though it hurts, we'll still say yes.
Yeah.
And I remember knowing what sharing my testimony would mean for the life I left behind. And I cried the entire time you preached. It's probably like 5 of us in the room. And you say amen to the camera. And then you just come off the stage and I just remember you hugging me. And I just felt so empowered, like, I could do this.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what I have to leave behind. Like, following the will of God is the thing that is the most important. So, I mean, I could give a whole bunch of stories on just like how you have played a role in all of this. So thank you for just like your yes and how it impacts me has been like life-changing for sure.
I have to tell you, it is an honor to see you grow, to see you step into the fullness of what God has already known about you, and to see you own it with authenticity and confidence. There is nothing more beautiful to me than seeing a woman really embrace who she is in a way that doesn't put pressure on her. Though there is pressure involved.
For sure.
There's no pressure to perform or even to do what you've seen done before, but just to rest in who you are. I feel like you embody that beautifully.
Yeah, thank you. You just have a way with words.
Well,
I'm all like, it's smooth. It's giving smooth talker.
Well, he's brought me.
I said, you had all the lines for them back in the day. You did. You had all the lines. No, that's real. You always support, you always share, you always invite me into spaces, and I don't take that for granted. I thank you for like even trusting me. I got to do a whole series on surrender, and I'm like, okay, that is my middle name these days. So sure, I love that. You always say like, man, it's so beautiful to see you fly. And I always say like, thank you for being a part of the people who reminded me I had wings. So I appreciate that. Okay. Prayer hands is crazy. Prayer hands, it's all him. Glory to God. We love that. It's glory to God. To God be the glory.
Period.
I love that. Okay. Power moves.
Yes.
5th book?
Yes.
Okay. Do you feel pressure that it's the 5th book? Or you feel like 5th book, been there, done that, got this?
No, there's definitely a pressure connected to it. So my last book was Woman Evolve, which, the movement existed before the book.
Okay.
And so the book was just kind of like everything that I've learned about Eve and womanhood, I'm going to put into this book. And it will be like my gift to women and the delegation. And so there was a little bit more certainty in that. Power Moves, I had this idea that I was literally just starting from scratch and like... Here we go, God. By the time I wrote Woman Evolve, like I'd done a few tours, I'd preached this message a few times. So it was like literally just taking what I already knew and putting it into a book. Whereas this very much so feels like taking the revelation that God has given me and trying to give it language. It's more like a sermon to me than Woman Evolve.
I feel that where it kind of like grows.
For sure.
Okay. So I feel like you are kind of redefining what power is or how we view it. What would you say is your definition of power?
Power is the ability to affect something strongly. And I use that definition because power itself is very neutral. But when we think about fear and shame and insecurity, those have affected us very strongly. And so they have a power within themselves. Our job is to reclaim the power that has been stolen from us, to allow it to move within us so that we have confidence and assurance and faith to then let power move through us so that we can experience what happens when we partner with God and power moves for us. And so it very much so follows this journey of power moving in us, through us, and then for us.
Okay. All right. Okay, wait. Before I jump into that, I'm coming back to that because there's something you say where, like, power isn't our achievement or our success.
Right.
But when I think about powerful people, I would equate it to they're powerful because of what they've achieved and because of the things they've been successful at. So how does power moving in us and through us make that not necessarily the measure in which we experience power?
Well, what we miss about anyone who's done anything powerful that we can see on the outside is that they had to first let power move inside of them. So when power moves in you, then power is an organic byproduct of what you do and what you touch. And so when we examine power as the ability to affect something strongly, and we look at what has affected us strongly, and then make it our responsibility to push back against that which has affected us, we are then grounded in a confidence that makes our dreams more attainable, our purpose more within reach, and then people marvel at what we did, but they don't realize it's not really what I did, it's who I became that produced what I did.
No, I feel that because, I'm thinking about my own self.
For sure, right.
It's like, for sure, my power is not in this. I'm still trying to figure out the stuff I accomplished.
Yeah.
But I do recognize that, like, dang, if I never became who I became, I would have never had the ability to experience the things I've experienced.
That was my big thing in writing the book. So I have all of these women who maybe like come to Woman Evolve, or they're listening to other people's messages and they're like, I feel so inspired. I'm ready to change. I'm ready to move. But how do I introduce this power I have received inside of me into the world outside of me? And so Power Moves was very much so this bridge for how you introduce who you have become into the world that you live in a way that doesn't mean like you have to burn every single bridge, every relationship.
Because usually a power move is like, all right.
Right now, like, boom, checkmate. I'm not who you used to know. And, the reality is I think most of us, we want to move in power. We want to have confidence. And we also want to maintain relationships that are valuable to us. And I believe that there is a world in which those two things can exist. Power does not have to be lonely. I have incredible friendships. I've got an amazing support system. So power doesn't have to be lonely, especially when you are committed to having power with accountability and not just power for the sake of fixing an insecurity or to make yourself feel better about who you were. Real power is like the totality of who you are, showing up in any given moment with grace and humility and courage and vulnerability and determination. That's power.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. Okay, you mentioned friendships and relationships. What does power and vulnerability look like in your relationships?
I think everyone's definition of power in a friendship is totally different.
For sure.
So that's why I'm like, foundationally, power is the ability to affect something strongly. And so I think that has a lot to do with how we figure out how power moves within us. But then we get to define, what does power look like for me as a friend, as a mother, as a wife, as a business owner? And that is unique to who you are. And so I would first ask someone who is determining, what does power look like for me as a friend? Is like, what can you offer someone else? That is the power you bring to the relationship. I'm loyal. I'm funny. I'm going to put you at the feet of Jesus. I'm going to cuss somebody out on your behalf. Like, what is your superpower?
Right? Like, what is your power?
What is your power in the relationship? And what power do you need to receive in return? And you get to define what power in the context of friendship looks like for you. And so there is very much so this reality that we have to define what power is. Otherwise, we're going to be living up to other people's expectation of what should make us powerful. I learned this as like a wife and a mother, trying to do what I've seen on television, trying to do what I see everyone doing on the books. Like, this is going to make me powerful. This is going to make me good. But this is not nuanced enough to take into account what is going to make me a powerful mother for Ella, which is different than what makes me a powerful mother for Mackenzie. And to be willing to ask myself with that level of detail, what does power look like for each of these spaces, is a gift that I think we all owe to ourselves, so that we're not just living up to who we think we should be.
Yeah. Do you feel like it's something that I discover over time throughout relationships, or do I need to have some level of an idea and then kind of let it evolve over time?
Well, I think you first have to know who you are, so that you know what you bring to the table, so that you can qualify whether or not the friendships and needs of the people who you are in relationship, you can actually fulfill those.
For sure.
Because you could be a powerful friend for someone else. You know what I mean? Like, they want to talk every 5 minutes. That's not your ministry.
And let me tell you.
That's not your ministry.
It's not.
And there is someone who can do that for them. So you might as well not set yourself up for disappointment or start... You got to unpack it.
It's true.
You got to unpack it. Like,
for sure.
I don't have the capacity.
I was going to say, I'm learning that line.
I don't have the capacity
for
to show up for you in that way. What I can do is this. And I hope that's enough, you know? Otherwise, we just end up overextended and depleted and then resentful that people are expecting from us the precedent we set. Like, you set this precedent, and now you're upset that this is the expectation, and the only thing you can do is create a new precedent. And that is not as intimidating as it sounds.
Yeah, I just think... Look at me. I've turned this into a therapy
Let's go.
No, because I think sometimes, like, which I didn't used to be like this, but you know how we go from like one end of the spectrum to the other? So at first we like, this is what it is. I don't do that. Goodbye, cut off. And then you grow.
Right.
And then you're like, you know, you got to be a better friend.
Yeah.
And then I think we just open up too much and we give too much access. And then you don't want to hurt people. So then you end up miserable.
So you just hurt yourself. Yeah, this is why this book is like so important, is because we would rather let other people down than hold ourselves up to the values and standards that mean a lot to us.
And that's not powerful.
That's not powerful. That's powerless. That's powerless. But what I will say is that I think what scares us out of making change is this idea that, like, I'm going to have to rip the Band-Aid off, or I am going to have to pop off on somebody for, like, I don't want to have to be mean. I don't want to have to be rude, but I do want to change. And I think that you get to tell someone, I can no longer show up in the way that I once did. I'm tired. My life has changed.
Yeah, I think that's the part, though. Yeah. I think when I think about it, for me, it's probably rooted in my life has changed, but I don't want people to think I changed.
But you have.
Yeah.
But you have.
It's true.
There's a part in the book where I talk about friendships and how the friendships that have suffered the most in my life are not the friendships where we changed. It's the friendships where one of us changed and the other one stayed the same. A part of doing life is this guarantee that, like, I am going to change.
Right.
This doesn't mean that you can't be a part of my change, but I just want to show you what has changed. You know how I used to be able to maybe stay up all night? Now that I'm speaking out more, I really need to take that time to, like, rest, refuel, and study. And so can we start talking in the afternoons? Or, you know, I may be texting more than I did in the past, and I just want you to understand how. That honors what the relationship is, and also gives you the space to be who you are in the context of it. And here's the reality, like, it may slow down. It may come to a drip. It may maintain its same level of thickness, just with a different expression, but you'll never know who can actually walk this thing out with you if you are forcing yourself to be double-minded.
Not double-minded.
Double-minded.
It was the dramatic pause. It was a double-minded.
You know, because, like, I have to be this way for this friendship, but everywhere else I'm someone different.
For sure. And it's not authentic because it's like, I am not that person anymore.
Yeah.
So it's like, and I think, too, it's kind of like if you can't I think I'm getting to the place where it's like, if you can't accept it, then this relationship has run its course.
Yeah.
And being okay with that.
And I thank you for who you were for me in this season. But that, like, to me, at the end of the day, power moves is about authenticity. Mm-hmm. You are no more powerful than your willingness to be authentic. And also the recognition that authenticity changes. So, like, I was authentically, like, maybe one of your best friends 6 months ago. Mm-hmm. And now...
Dang, 6 months?
Well, up until 6, but before then, perhaps years.
I'm like, dang.
But something shifts in 6 months, and now my authenticity has to be reintroduced in the context of this relationship. I will tell you, so, you know, PT and I have almost been married 10 years. Mm-hmm. And when we first got married, like, my kids were a little bit older, his kids were older, and then we have Ella. And we have a different level of responsibility when you have a newborn baby versus older children. Yeah. And I authentically wanted to go out to dinner every night before we had Ella. I wanted to do all kinds of, we could travel, we could do whatever. The kids are in school, we have more support. Then we have a newborn, and I can't move like that anymore. Mm-hmm. And so I had to be willing to be like, hey, babe, here's the thing. Yeah. That version of me no longer exists in this season. Mm-hmm. And I need your grace and your compassion and your partnership to really learn who I am now. And that authenticity, just being authentic is not necessarily the same as being consistent. Because a lot of times we think that I have to be authentic to who I was back then.
I gotta be the same.
Right.
Like, you knew me 10 years ago. You're expecting that, Brenda.
For sure.
She's not.
She doesn't exist anymore. Yeah. So, I mean, God changes his expression all throughout Scripture. We see he's talking through a bush one minute. He's using the clouds the next minute.
Trying to wipe people out.
You know, okay. Listen, what are we doing? You know, we have different expressions. And until we give ourselves permission to have different expressions, we'll always feel restricted in our lives. Like, I can be the life of the party one minute, and I could be a wallflower in the next. And those both can be authentic to who I am, depending on what's going on in my life.
Yeah. Okay, so what do we say to the person on the other side of that, the other person who's trying to learn to embrace this new version of you or this next level of authenticity? If I'm used to Sarah showing up this way, and now Sarah's hitting me with, hey, I'm not that version of myself anymore, what are some steps that I can take on the other side of that to be open to embracing the new version of you?
I think it's okay to grieve what once was. Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with grieving what once was. But I think also qualifying, like, what did this friendship mean to me? Mm-hmm. Was it something that was for me, or was it something that was mutual in our desire to really cheer one another on and to be there for one another? Because if I needed you to stay the same for me to feel safe, for me to feel protected, for me to feel like I had worth, honor, and value, I may have been putting too much pressure on you to take care of me instead of us just walking life out together. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's okay to grieve it, but I think also qualifying, like, what did this relationship mean to me, and was that healthy in the first place? Because I don't want you to have to stay the same in order for me to stay connected to you. I want you to pursue your dreams. I want you to be able to have moments where you're sad and maybe going through a depression, and moments where you're the life of the party. I want you to be successful. I want you to travel. I want you to be at home. Like, I need you to have complete freedom to be all of who you are, and I need freedom to be able to be all of who I am. And I think those are the friendships that end up being able to go the long haul.
Mm-hmm. No, that's real. I like that question. Like, what was the purpose of this friendship? Because that is true. Like, if we're honest, a lot of people enter friendships based off what they could get out of them. Yeah. And so it's like, if I'm not showing up how you want me to show up, you're like, I don't like this version of you. Yeah, because you can't benefit.
Not only that, but like, we've bonded over a need that you were never meant to fulfill. So this friendship has become my cure for loneliness. Mm-hmm. This friendship has become the thing that helps me feel better about the fact that I'm not in a relationship. And so now you're in a relationship, and I can't even be happy for you because you were supposed to help me feel better.
Both of us supposed to be single.
Right. No, for real. Both of us supposed to be broke. We both supposed to be single. We both supposed to hate our husbands. You know what I mean? And now you happily married.
No, that is true. I lost a friendship like that because I think I was determined to not be bitter. Like, I was like, no, I I don't want to be hurt. Like, I'm going to acknowledge the hurt, but we bonded over our trauma.
Yeah.
But I was on a mission to not live in that space. And I recognized that our friendship didn't work anymore once I started reaching like a healed place.
Yeah.
And it was like, dang, the reality is this friendship was rooted in our trauma.
Yeah.
And because we weren't both moving in the same direction, it was kind of like, well, gotta let this one go.
Here we go. All you can do is tell someone, like, this is my destination, and you tell them that by your actions, by, like, I'm not necessarily down for the, like, announcement where we're sitting down and we're like, you know what? I'm moving into the direction of my destiny, and I'm leaving.
You can't go.
You know what I mean? But to begin to allow your actions, your words, and your thoughts to align with where you're headed, and it will organically fall off or they'll pick up speed. But it's not your job to highlight where someone else needs to get their life together to get on your level. If you're going to be on
my... because I'm up here.
Yeah, you know.
It's giving low vibration.
It is. And you don't want that, you know. Be authentic to who you are, and it inspires people. Yeah. It motivates people, or, you know, those people become a distant memory.
Drifting on a memory.
In the rear view.
Yeah, no, that's real. Okay. Have thoughts about decisions I need to make. Okay. But it's cool. I appreciate that. Okay. We talk power moves. When you think about someone who feels powerless as it relates to like their voice and like finding it, navigating how to like, I've spent so much time not believing in myself, and now I'm at the brink of like experiencing this power from being in a room or being in a space or being inspired, and now I need to take the first step, but I have no clue how to do that, and I feel like the moment I take a step, I'm gonna fall flat on my face. What do you say to that person?
Oh, well, I think everyone's idea of what their voice is different.
For sure.
Because a lot of times we hear this, and I think people are seeking an opportunity to create an audience.
Yeah.
And there are some people who are literally trying to find their voice just in the context of friendships and relationships.
I was just going to say, just at home.
Right. How do I speak up for myself?
At home?
So I would say take note of the moments when you aren't using your voice. When something rubs you the wrong way and you internalize and you don't speak up when you wanted to say something, you allow someone to project a thought onto you that's not true, or there's an idea happening and you feel like you could contribute, but you don't. Like, let's talk about those moments and determine, like, what fear kept you from speaking up? Because that's where your power is. Your power is being held hostage by whatever that fear is. And when you can identify what that fear is, I want you to practice what you wish you would have said instead, even if it's to yourself, even if it's in a journal.
Yeah. Because
those are the little ways in which we begin to give ourselves the language we need to stand up next time. So a lot of times if we struggle with finding our voice, which I'm one of those people, I've struggled to like defend myself, protect myself, speak up. And I had to start practicing what I wish I would have said instead. Like, and not like...
I was going to say, we used to do that. As we get in a fight, you're like, oh, I wish I would have said. And next time it's like
what would that have looked like if I would have showed up authentically, if I would have said what I really meant? Okay, maybe it would have looked a little rough. Maybe it would have been a little rough around the edges. How could I have smoothed this out and still gotten the point across? You know what I mean? You have to practice the language you want to embody. When you just allow yourself to just be frustrated, hoping that you can find your voice without practicing it and giving it actual language, you'll never use it. But to be able to say, okay, I failed myself today because I didn't speak up. My fear of being rejected, my fear of it not making sense or sounding dumb kept me from standing in that moment. And so what I wish I would have said was, I think we should do it this way. And I'm going to ststart practicing hearing my own voice so that it doesn't catch them by surprise and me by surprise.
Like, oh, I didn't even know.
I say that?
I didn't know I had that
I did. You have to know what's in you.
Yeah.
And you got to practice it and marinate in it and nurture it and water it and think to yourself, next time there's a flag on the play, instead of me being silent, I'm going to dare to say X, Y, and Z. Even if I have to say it in an email, even if I have to be the person who has a meeting after the meeting because there were too many people in the room, do whatever is necessary to start exercising your voice, and it becomes easier and easier with practice.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense because I think about how, like, I have had moments where I'm like, I didn't know I had that in me until I was in an environment that called it out. But then it was like, once I recognized it, then it was like, okay, I like how that felt. And how do I, like, cultivate that? Or how do I get in more spaces that help cultivate that? So how important is it to be in environments that maybe call out a power you don't necessarily recognize?
I think it is extremely instrumental, especially when you have never seen power displayed in the way that you sense that you're called to. So if you've never seen, I remember when I first started speaking, I was just telling my story. It was supposed to be just me telling my story.
So you thought.
And then PT asked me to preach, and I started paying attention to the different ways that women who preach. And there were those who were just like, soft-spoken and short and to the point. And then there were like these women who had a lot more passion and they were delivering with a lot more depth. And I began just to study all of the different ways to do it, not to imitate it, but to see that there are so many different ways to do the very same thing, that I don't have to be intimidated if my way doesn't look this one specific way. And so in doing that, I created an environment for myself. The beauty of the internet, with all of its nuances and complications, is that you can create an environment within an environment. So if you don't have the friends, you don't have the family or the community to cultivate what it is you're trying to develop, you can create an environment with podcasts, with YouTube channels, with the people you follow, to pull out what it is you believe that you have access to or should have access to.
No, I love that. First of all, go get the book, okay? Go get the book. Because I think like I think sometimes I think I display a lot more confidence than I actually have. But I think that all of the things that you're sharing are like things I'm like, oh, I can apply this here and I can apply this there. So I think it's like,
well, you're in a unique space.
Do share.
Well, because I was in a similar place in which you are, if I'm right, and you can correct me, of course, please do. You are moving from someone who's behind the scenes.
Very much.
Into someone who is, it feels like the center of attention, when in those moments where you have to step into it. And you, if you're like me, weren't really sure, how long does this last? Am I going to always have something to say? Does it sound like what I've already said? Can I really do this?
Yeah.
Like,
and do I want to?
Well, that part doesn't matter.
No,
that part doesn't matter. Unfortunately.
That's not.
The problem is, the reason why that doesn't matter is because you didn't want to and you're doing it anyway. So, like, here we are. It doesn't. Because, want to, I don't want to be the reason why someone who needed to hear from God doesn't get to hear. So, like, do I want to? No. You know what I mean?
Do I also want to hold the weight of that?
Yeah, no. So we're talking about like
it doesn't matter.
Here we go.
It doesn't matter for sure.
But it takes a while to kind of settle into, and then you start getting invited spaces, and then like people. It's one thing when you get invited and nobody knows who you are. Then you get invited and people know who you are, and like I don't know. Like I do think it was better to be invited places and no one knew who I was.
No, it yes.
It's so good. I can't disappoint
you. And don't tell me you know me.
No.
Now I'm like, oh.
Yeah, like I can't disappoint you. The bar is so low.
So low.
It's so low.
I love when they're like, man, I just found out about you.
Great. Phenomenal.
Love that.
I was speaking somewhere and it was like, he didn't know that I'd spoken in other places. And so he was like, just don't be nervous. When you're holding the microphone, make sure you hold to your face. I was like, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Tell me from the very end. And then someone was like, she about to snatch my wig off. I was like, I don't know this lady. I don't know this.
Said no.
I don't know what she's talking about.
No, because that does create like another pressure, right?
It does.
Because you're like, oh, I saw that clip. And I'm like, I don't even know who that was.
Now, like, oh, I'm coming. My edge is about to be ripped off. I'm putting on my lashes. I'm not wearing makeup because I know you're going to wreck me. And I'm like, we'll see.
You should have wore your makeup.
I don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. But it takes a minute to trust that the faithfulness of God also continues to show up in the uncertainty of the call.
For sure. Yeah.
And that takes a minute.
Yeah, no, I think it is the power from within, for sure. Mm-hmm. Because I really be losing my mind.
Yeah.
And it is like, it's like, okay, I'm going to just go with it. But if a lot of it is the pressure that comes internally.
For sure.
It's like, because half the time people are not even thinking what you think they're thinking. But I'm learning, I'll just be going with the flow.
Yeah.
And ending up places.
Here I am.
And doing things. So no, okay, so one final thought for, the person that, I feel like you said it's like a sermon. And so, correct me if I'm wrong. Mm-hmm. But like, I feel like whenever I'm developing a sermon, I'm always like, God, show me the one that this is supposed to reach. So for the one that you wrote Power Moves for, what is one final thought you'd want to leave them with?
I would tell that person that you do not have to hunger to be powerful in order to harness your power. I think the idea of being powerful in a powerhouse can sound very intimidating. Mm-hmm. And the way that power has been abused and misused, it could just be very unattractive. But alternatively, to settle for an existence where powerlessness is your norm is less than what God has for you. Power can move through you without power possessing you and changing you into someone you don't like. And so I would focus more on the areas where you experience power loss and ask God, is this an area in my life where you want me to harness your power? And who would I become on the other side of that? If you start to just hunger for that, to be a vessel for God's power, to show up in the world, to show up in your decision-making, mm-hmm. to show up in your friendships and relationships, then you don't have to worry about anything else. God will handle the rest.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Thank you for being here with me and sharing all the power. No, for sure. Hey guys, do me a favor. Go get the book. Go register for Woman Evolve Conference, because if you're not there, where are you? Like, what are you doing with your life? I cannot. Hey guys, go follow. You probably already do, because it is the Sarah Jakes Robert. You guys already know. Subscribe to the channel, and we'll be right back here next week. This is Life in Perspective. We out.